Nathaniel Hummel, welcome back to Suit Up the Podcast.
Dude, it's happy to be here and congratulations on a new book published. It's super exciting to have this Veritas Duel come out, dude. I can't believe it.
I know. Okay. This is so cool what you guys did here. And before we start talking about that, because congratulations to you too also for having a great book coming
Thank you,
out.
dude.
Your suit jacket looks phenomenal. What,
Thank you.
please tell me about this because it's got this beautiful like salt and pepper. I'm
Yeah,
trying to determine the
it's a tweed.
it is a tweed. Okay.
Yeah, it's for sure a
It's
tweed.
definitely got texture.
This is just a classic Goodwill find. I think I've had this it's been super interesting as I've grown as a man and further on
It
into
Do
manhood.
you mean literally grown?
No, which is what's interesting. I guess I must have really bought stuff well when I was younger and was fine wearing stuff a little bigger because I have gotten larger and a lot of the stuff that I bought when I was younger still fits. But this one's, think I have pictures of me in this from almost 8 years ago now, which is crazy that I have clothes that are getting older and older because they always say, my wife always gets on me. She's like, just buy something really expensive and really nice, and you'll have it for the rest of your life. And I'm like looking at the $3 suits I have from Goodwill, and I'm like, that one's like 12 years old. I've had that suit longer than I've known you, so I think I bought well. But yeah, this one is. I actually am. We're recording this right before I go on a trip abroad, and I've been trying to debate the
Oh
what to
dear.
bring. It's tough to figure out what outfits you need to bring, and it's also tough because we're only checking one bag, and so
Hmm.
we're going to be in the Alps, and it can be cold up there. So it's like, do I bring just this tweed jacket that's nice and warm and a bunch of layers to toss underneath it, and really just go full like alpinist mode and only wear a suit while I'm hiking? But who knows? We'll figure it out. That's the fun of dressing like an adventurer.
Indeed, which let's shout out that series because you've been doing Dress Like an Adventurer on Instagram for a while, and
Yeah.
it's always amazing. You do a fantastic job of
Thank you.
curating an outfit based on a book. I do you what can you tease the audience with about upcoming Dress Like an Adventurers?
Um, because of this trip, it's made my life a lot more intentional because usually I'm kind of just wandering around thinking like, well, what should I do next? Here, knowing that I would be out for 2.5 weeks or so, I knew I had to plan ahead. So there's some really cool stuff coming next. I tried to get the ones while I'm gone to be a little more like high class espionage sort of
Hmm.
flavors or mafia flavors. So there's my
Hmm.
two hints. And then I have some exciting stuff coming from a short story collection and actually two short story collections.
Ooh.
And what's interesting is the one short story collection was inspired by the other short story collection to some degree. And you've interviewed one of the guys and perhaps the son of the other guy. So that's all I'll say.
Ooh.
Um, yeah. So pretty cool. I'm excited. I think that's something that I've always been interested in. There's a lot of menswear aficionados in the space, but none of them
Hmm.
ever talk about um, like kind of the adventure side of it, which would include
Hmm.
the EDC. Like, oh, I'm wearing these specific shoes because they're going to help me running from bad guys, or help me climb the Mount Everest sort of stuff, or they're never doing any sort of tobacco or cigars or um, firearms or knives or anything. So I was always like, man, there's got to be a bunch of people who like those things, but also like to dress well. And this is who I'm
Hmm.
making this for. And it's been, I mean, the most successful one, oddly enough, was the Mercenary C one, which I didn't think anybody knew about, but actually the artist or one of the authors commented on there and he's like, man, this is fantastic. So he followed me, which is super sick.
I'm
Um,
sorry, upcoming guest on the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast.
we're gonna have to talk with him. He's fantastic because that's probably my favorite comic book of all time. It's very similar to Louis L'Amour's Ponga Jim Adventures,
Hmm.
but it's a submarine instead of a tramp freighter. And then that one was doing really well and was the best. And then I did the Salvatore Giuliano one from the Sicilian, and that one was doing fantastic. People really seem to like that, uh, which is interesting because he's like mafia adjacent. He was a bandit, so it has sort of like a little mafia style, but it also has kind of outdoors bandit Robin Hood in the 1940s in Italy style. So I don't know. I was surprised that one did as well as it did, but Who knows? It's pretty cool. I really
Who
like
are
it.
we to judge the tastes of the internet?
I don't know. There's no way to figure
We're
that
just here to
out.
please.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, dude.
Speaking of pleasing the masses, before we start talking just crime fiction in general, how
Mhm.
did the Veritas Duel become a thing? Because this was something that I know that you guys had been discussing and teasing for a little bit before
Yeah.
we actually start the projects.
It's always so interesting how things like these come to pass because it's similar in a lot of ways to the podcast of like Luke Luke and I can't really pin down how the podcast thing happened, or even Fighting Heart of Man, we were like, you write, I'm starting to write. Why don't we write something together? It's kind of how it went. With the duels, I remember him sending me something because they had never been on my radar that the ace doubles existed. And he's like, dude, these are so cool. Check them out. And I was like, man, that is cool. And he's like, we should for sure bring these back at some point. And then we kind of just tabled it. There's a lot of things like that that we're like, this would be a great idea. And then we're like, yeah, we'll do that for sure. And then it floats away in the sea of other Veritas stuff. But then in the Discord, Jeff was talking about how it's Jeff Pintabona, one of his
Hmm.
biggest passions is to bring those back. And Luke and I were like, we were talking about that. He's not going to believe us when we tell him, but we had already brought this up. And so Luke, I think, messaged him and was like, "Hey, let's set up a meeting to talk about this." And we it took a long time to happen. I think way longer than it should have, but finally we were able to get it rolling. And um, Jeff is such a big Western author, and a lot of the
Hmm.
doubles were Westerns that immediately, and this was all kind of formulated. I guess it would have been almost a year ago at this point,
Hmm.
maybe even a little longer ago, for sure longer ago when Luke and I first talked about it, but it was right around when Gun Law was coming out or had just
Mm.
come out before Luke decided that it's not his favorite book he's ever written. And he still really liked writing Westerns, which I think he still loves writing Westerns now. He just is always like, there's so much to think about when you write a Western for
It's
sure.
true.
And so he was like, okay, well, Jeff and I will write a Western. And then I was thinking, I was not sure what I would write. And he was like, well, you like crime and Terrence likes crime, so you guys write a crime double. And I was like, all right, I'm in. It's too easy. So that's pretty much how it happened. And then we reached out to you guys about that. I can't remember when, but here we are
Here
on
we
the eve,
are.
on either on the eve or the after eve. I don't know when this will go live, but
I actually am planning on putting this one out specifically day of release. So this is a bonus treat to
oh
everyone.
man, what a treat.
It's in no way,
That's
shape, or
awesome.
form sponsored by Veritas Entertainment, but if you want to buy our books, please go get
Yeah, for
yourself
sure.
an
For
awesome
sure. Check
crime
out the
double.
books.
Um, I figured today we just kind of talk about what crime fiction means to us
Yeah.
and what our favorite crime fiction stories are, if you have a particular one that like launches out
Yeah.
at you. For me, I know when I approached writing my dual installment, the
Hmm.
Midas game, I very much try to approach crime fiction from the Elmore Leonard side of it,
Okay.
just because I don't think crime fiction really gets better than Elmore Leonard. Is
Yeah.
just the snappy dialogue, quick-witted heroes, bad guys that
Uh-huh.
you either want to be around or you're like, oh, you dumb little piece of crap. How do you think that you can pull
Yeah.
this off?
Yeah, dude. This is interesting because I think it launches us just right off the rip into a wider sense of what even is crime fiction, which I don't want to derail us too far. Because I think a lot of the stories, it's so hard to find stories that are centered, I think, around kind of the piece of crap guys all the
Hmm.
time, you know? So a lot of the crime fiction that I think of sort of finds its place like do private investigator stories count as
Hmm.
crime fiction because they're
They're
facing
solving
crime,
crimes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's stuff like that's kind of tricky. I've read very little Elmore Leonard, so if you're saying that the Midas game was partially inspired by that, it sounds like I got a lot to read because the Midas game is so
Oh,
fantastic.
thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. So for me, I don't know, this writing this character too, like you mentioned, you were kind of thinking off of that. I am uncertain how to feel about Salvatore Cotolino because he really rides the line maybe too much of good guy, bad guy. So it's hard to kind of gauge because he's a mafia enforcer. It's called international enforcement because he goes on an international enforcement mission just to kill people, you know? So he's not a good guy. But for sure, he was heavily inspired to some degree by the Shel Scott character with the
Hmm.
way that he interacts with women, which I thought was it's always tricky writing kind of, I don't know if womanizer is the right word, more so a
Hmm.
ladies' man. It's not like he's women want him to like them.
Yes.
There's nothing weird going on. But even writing that is so difficult when you're trying to write someone who's a little more heroic, you know, because then
Hmm.
it's like, oh, well, is that something that you want to encourage young men to do? Our culture is so saturated with like the idea of just, oh yeah, chase all the women you can and don't stay loyal to anybody. And I think that that's not a good thing to learn. So
Hmm.
having a character who is bouncing from women to women, because that's one of the biggest issues with the Shel Scott character in my mind is
Hmm.
at the end of every book, he ends up with one of the numerous beauties that he was dealing with throughout the rest of the book. And it for sure seems like that's the one he's going to be with forever. And then the next book, you've never even heard of her, you know? So it's that sort of thing, which is why Chester Drum is probably my favorite character of all time because there's a constant, there's different women in every book, but there is one constant woman that he's always got his mind kind of on. Um, so super, super interesting in that sort of concept of like, how do you write unadmirable characters who are
Hmm.
also somewhat admirable. And to that, I think I had to turn to the Nolan stories, which I
Hmm.
really, really like from it's Max Allan Collins, right?
Yep. I've got
Fantastic.
them sitting back behind me.
Yeah, dude. It's so interesting that he is always described as looking exactly like Lee Marvin, right?
Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah, yeah, Lee Van Cleef. I always get the double Lees confused.
You know what? That's okay because then there's like the Fargo series, which is like a Western thing
Uh-huh,
that
uh-huh.
the guy's described as having like white hair. And really, as you read the description, you're like, is this just Lee Marvin?
That's
That
so funny. They love just casting guys in book. I wonder if there is ever any like legal issues with that of them being like, you can't use my
the the
verbal
um
likeness.
the closest thing to that I know of is in, I mean, it's fairly well known now, but when they created Ultimate Nick Fury in the Marvel
Uh-huh.
Comics, they based him on um come on, why is his name bouncing my mind? Samuel L. Jackson. They
Oh
based
yeah.
it on his
Uh-huh.
image, and he was like, huh. And he like apparently reached out to them like through his publicist thing at one point. Was like, is this supposed to be me? And they're like, I'm not certain how to answer that one. And later, the comic creator was like, he met Samuel L. Jackson, was like, hey, I just want to say sorry for like just stealing your image. He's like, no, bro, thank you. It resulted in all this money and all these
That's
movies.
crazy. That's so funny. I didn't realize that that was pre him doing it. That's insane. That's so funny. Yeah, that there you go. Maybe getting your image stolen can end up positively. Um,
So,
which I
how
think,
did, so Lee Van Cleef, the Nolan series?
yeah. Um, I don't know. I spend a lot of time scrolling through Hoopla trying to find
Hmm.
the new books, new audiobooks to listen to. And I think I found one of my favorite characters of all time is Matt Helm,
Hmm.
and he's read by a guy named Stefan Rudnicki, and that
Yes.
guy is one of the best readers ever. He's fantastic. So I eventually just ended up scrolling through on Hoopla, the Stefan Rudnicki page, and just seeing all
Yes.
these all these things. Which to another point of crime fiction, you have Quarry, who is a super
Hmm.
interesting guy, who is once again is not a good dude at all. Like, he's just he's I think he's cut from the Parker mold, even maybe a little more than Nolan was, because Nolan, I
Hmm.
think Nolan's for sure got a code, and he's an interesting character that develops a little bit, and his goal is not to just be the worst guy ever. Where I feel like sometimes you read a Parker novel and you're like, man, is there any intention of like niceness or goodness at all in you? You just seem like your number one goal is to just be nasty. Which is even more so how I think I feel for Quarry. Because
Hmm.
th those books, and that's what's interesting, writing a crime fiction story, following a lead that you're not necessarily sure if you like, is that towards the middle or end of it, you're like, man, is anybody even gonna like this guy? He's kind of like a dirtbag, you know? He's just doing the worst things possible. But I think that that kind of is an interesting thing to talk about as we get into this podcast a little deeper, is like, what is the place for that sort of crime fiction? What is the place for
Hmm.
crime fiction at all? And how is it like, how do you balance these characters who are going about things the wrong way for ill-gotten gain? And like, how
Hmm.
does that all work? And like, what is it? Are these cautionary tales? Are these things that you read so that you don't actually go become a criminal? You know, like just so you can have it happen in your mind. You know, like it's interesting to think about.
I think that the appeal of it is competence in theory. Like the ones
Yeah,
where it's like
for
Parker,
sure.
it is the desire to be able to pull off the job. We read it because we want to have the thrill of being good at something. And that
Yeah,
even when I think that that's specifically the heist,
right.
specifically, that's the appeal to it is the I can adapt to the situation. And like
Right.
I know that isn't literary, but the Ocean's 11 movies,
Yeah.
specifically that first one that has the first new one from the
Right.
2000s. Oh my goodness, you watch that and you're like, I feel good. And it's just
Yeah.
there's something fun about seeing cool guys doing cool things and
Right.
pulling off the job against all
Right.
odds. And I
Right.
think that that's like that hits the aspirational version of crime fiction in a lot of
Yeah,
senses
for sure.
because they're also doing it for the right reasons. Like there's
Right,
the
dude.
right reasons in quotation marks. Um, we can justify it, and so we're on board with it.
Right.
Whereas Parker definitely, I don't think that we can really justify it, other than at the end of the day, it's his job to
Right.
do this thing. And if I remember correctly, because I've never read the first Parker novel, but the first Parker novel is basically he's going against the outfit. So it's kind
Yeah.
of a, well, he's taking down guys worse than himself that
Right,
are
right.
more evil, et cetera, et cetera. I
Yeah.
haven't seen I've watched the Mel Gibson film,
Payback, I
which Payback, which is
think. Yeah, fantastic.
not
It's based off of
Chef's Kiss,
so good.
definitely height of Mel Gibson as like this action star.
I know.
But
I
again,
think
it Porter is not a good guy, but we
I
enjoy
always forget
seeing
his
him
name's
take down the
Porter.
bad guys.
Yeah, yeah. Right, which to that point, I think that that's bringing up Ocean's 11. That is what's cool about these sorts of stories, right? Is the
Hmm.
idea that like it gets back to the Robin Hood thing. At the end of the
Hmm.
day, Robin Hood is the archetype for good guy crime fiction, you know,
Hmm.
because you have, I think that that's also to your point, like the competency is super, super sweet. And then the other side too is like inside of us, especially I think as Americans, with the Revolutionary War as our backdrop, the idea of like, oh man, we can go up against the bad guys who are just sowing injustice from like the top, you know, like
Hmm.
England's over here taxing the pants off us. I'm like, no, we're not going to let that happen. So I think the same thing happens in the crime fiction is you get that idea of like, oh yeah, there's injustice that the big crime guys are doing, or even
Hmm.
the good guys who are in spots of power and are corrupt. It's like, well, then you gotta, if becoming a criminal is the only thing left to do, then I'm in. Let's do it, you know? So I think that for sure there's that aspect. And that's to that point, I think both of these stories have elements of that in our double where it's like they're
Hmm.
not really out here wantonly messing with people who are good guys. You know, they're not
Hmm.
going and picking on like the little dweeby weak people who need help.
Hmm. Well, this is something I personally love about writing. So, the Midas game, for those that don't
Mhm.
know, is a confidence game story. So, it's
So
there's a
good,
con
dude.
artist, he's fleecing a guy in one of the like essential rules of con men, and that is this is self-justifying. You can't con an honest man
There you go.
because you have to have a bit of thieves' blood.
Right.
Someone has to want something for nothing, which inherently makes them pliable. It brings them into
Yeah.
the con because they're selfish, greedy little pigs. Now, the hard part is when you start realizing everyone is a selfish, greedy little pig at a
Yeah.
certain point. It's
Right.
merely a question whether or not they fall for the con.
Yeah, dude. and it was expertly crafted,
Thank you.
expertly enacted, which is interesting too, because at that point, this is the fun part about writing too, is the idea of at a certain point you start wondering if Jack Devlin is the con man or if Terrence Leahy is because you came up with all and you were writing such a fantastic story, which is cool to that point of and I think that that's another thing that reading it kind of satiates, but also writing helps you. I mean, I think Luke and I talked about that on the Zach James podcast interview of like at the end of the day, maybe writing is just so that you can explore these avenues that might
Hmm.
end up putting you in jail if you
Yeah.
did them in real life. Like you can check off a massive con now since you wrote a great con man story. You don't have to actually try it out to see if it'll work.
I was just talking with Eric Beetner on the podcast,
Okay,
and
cool.
he writes a lot of crime fiction, and he had made the comment that he's like, I drive a Prius. I'm like a middle of the road guy. I'm
Yeah.
not going to go out and do these things. But there's an inherent fascination and curiosity as to what motivates and creates the people that do these things.
Yeah.
And so writing crime fiction for him is an exploration into the different psyches and like lifestyle and all the things that make someone commit those crimes or what are those crimes like. Not
Yeah.
advocating to do them, but just the
Right,
curiosity and the
right.
fascination of it. And like back to Elmore Leonard, that's one of the things I think is interesting about his writing in particular is that he writes very much, these are working class stiffs. It's the same as
Mhm.
anyone showing up for a job usually. It's just their job is crime.
Right,
And
right.
so they're having weird conversations with their buddies as they're like burying a body because that's what
Right.
you do when you're on the job with your bros.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And I think that that's super interesting too, is I don't know, it's so easy as the world gets more jaded and more cynical to be like, well, any big corporation is doing a bunch of crime, so why don't I just do it and reap the benefits myself? Like I think that that's kind of where this world's coming to is like, especially you see all the stuff going on in the political world and all that. And it's just like, oh, well, for anyone to become a successful big business, that they had to do some sort of like palm greasing and everything like that. And then the American spirit's like, well, small business, I'll just go grease the palms myself and reap the. So yeah, it's super interesting to think about that and the whole idea of the psyche. I really like that idea, which it makes me think too. A lot of the interest in this and in this genre
Hmm.
is that as you see history play out, and this is for more just men's adventure fiction in its broadest sense, everybody reads this. Like the
Hmm.
people who are capable and possibly able to be the heroes of these stories love reading it. The people who are completely incapable of doing it love reading it too. And I think it's so interesting just to see that play out. And it really is just like inspiring that like deep down, almost everybody wants to be caught up in some sort of crazy adventure like this. So it's encouraging to hear and think about.
Well, okay, so this is something I think that is interesting for the case of Salvatore Cotolino is that the mafia itself
Yeah.
does come from a sincere place. And it's at
Yeah,
least,
dude, it's
or
crazy.
to my understanding, its original like origins was
Right.
basically a protection racket for your people
Yeah.
and just kind of grew into its nice little business. But
Yeah.
there is, even in the mafia, there's this sense of family, like in a capital
Right.
F and a lowercase f sense,
Yeah, dude.
where loyalty is everything. And the moment you
Right.
start losing that loyalty, that's when heads start to roll.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was there's rumors that I'm Italian. There's rumors that there was once family connections long, long ago, which I don't know if I can say that or else I'd get killed somehow. Um, and so
There's
there's
that
always
dirty little rat we've been looking for all this
go beat
time.
him up. And as an Italian, there's always, I mean, me and my brother were just talking on the phone the other day about it. It's like in the back of your mind, regardless of if it's true or not. And I don't think it is true because I don't think you can ever get into the mafia if it's on your mother's side. And
Hmm.
my dad's family's been here since like years and years and years. So there's no Italian there. But there's always in the back of your mind, like, if life gets really bad, maybe I'll just become a made man, you know? And I know for sure there's no way that could ever happen, but there's always just the thought, which is interesting that there is like, even with the understanding of how bad and evil the
Hmm.
mafia can be, there is just some sort of incredible allure to it. You know, you think of like um, Vegas in the 60s. You think of
Hmm.
Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, and Frank Sinatra is supposedly connected and all this stuff. And you read, I was just finished reading a Shel Scott book, and they were in Acapulco in Mexico at a mafia family meetup. And it's just like, man, and it's because of that time, I think, is so romanticized in
Hmm.
history of like the
Yes.
50s and 60s is the golden era. And that was the big crime stuff going on. And you're able to lose a little bit of the like, oh, these guys were terrible human beings who would kill people and put horse heads in beds and stuff like that, you know? So coming in to write Sal, who is a mafiosi, I don't know which is the right one to say. I didn't want to do kind of your just classic mafia story, although there are some obviously that are really good, better than I could ever write. You know, I'm never going to write the next Godfather, and that's something that I really like. Actually, I have it sitting right here. About the Sicilian was the idea of taking something that's mafia adjacent and writing this really kind of like crazy high adventure story because
Hmm.
it gets bogged down back and forth with politics. I mean, it would have to look how thick it is. Um, but the baseline is this guy is just tired of the oppression that is coming down from the government, and I think something not even big causes it. You know how it is in these Robin Hood sort of stories. Like he's taken his cow with some cheese on it into the market, and the soldiers go up and they kill it and start carving it up in front of him, and he just pops off and kills the guy. I think that's not exactly what happens, but it's that sort of idea. And next thing you know, he's a criminal, and he has to go become a criminal, and then he gets kind of, which I didn't realize, that Salvatore Giuliano is actually a historical figure. He
Oh.
yeah, he's a real guy, which I found that out yesterday because someone commented on my um reel about him that I did. He was like, well, he wasn't in the mafia, and I was like, yeah. I did know that but I for sure made it sound like he was in the video. And so he worked with the mafia, he worked against the mafia. It was a very interesting back and forth going on. So that was kind of my baseline inspiration of like, oh, you can do things that are mafia adjacent that haven't been done before or have been done less. And so that was kind of the inspiration for the story. I was like, I want this guy to go on a globe-trotting adventure. I basically want him to be like um, the mafia's James Bond sort of thing. You know,
Hmm.
like if there's something that shows up that, or he's one of the like trigger men for the main
Hmm.
bigger family, and then like, oh, something's going wrong in Siam, which is how he ends up in Siam, where he meets Noah Redford and fighting hard a man, like stuff like that. They'll be like, oh, you go over there. I was able to write something for Timber and Smoke. The pipe smoking magazine has a Chicago pipe show magazine edition that can only be bought at the Chicago Pipe Show.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, I wrote a Chicago-based story that was sort of the same thing. Something's going wrong with the bootlegging in Chicago. Boom, Sal's headed out there to fix
A
it, you know?
licensed troubleshooter.
Exactly, exactly, dude. So that was kind of the inspiration for it. And this is the way that it all starts. He was a, a decent mafia guy up until then, but then he gets caught up in this big thing. Like you said, loyalty starts breaking down and heads have to
Hmm.
start rolling. And this is almost an unsanctioned first job for him that gets him the position. So that was my inspiration for it.
It's a great story. I'm really looking forward to people reading it because it has, if you follow the Veritas lore, stuff weaves
Yeah,
in and
dude.
out, which we need to get you to start writing some articles on the Events Adventure wiki so
I
we
know.
can start
I think
keeping
about that
track.
constantly. I literally spent I was thinking that I think it was listening to the Stormgate Press Charles Millhouse episode you had, and has the timelines on his
Hmm.
website. And I was like, man, we should do something like that. And then I was like, wait a minute, Terrence already started that with the Men's Adventure Wiki. What am I doing? So I gotta go in and backfill some information so that we can have a cohesive thing. um, which
The nice thing is then we have our writers' Bibles like just there, so if any
yeah,
one of us want to play with the stuff, we can just actually look it up and know what's happening.
slip it right in, right? Yeah, yeah, and take build your own writer Bible out and build the wiki out simultaneously. It's genius. Um, which let's talk a little bit. Since we're here, and both of our stories, I think, involve elements of humor. 'Cause
Hmm.
there's times for sure when I was laughing out loud reading the Midas Game, which is one of the highest compliments I can pay an author.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you for writing. That's always my first thought. Same thing when I was reading Thorn. I think in the first like 3 pages, I laughed out aloud, and I was like, all right, we're in for a good ride here. This is going to be good stuff. But to that, one of my favorite crime films, and we've
Hmm.
talked about it in passing, is Charade, which is
Yes.
interesting because it steps the line between crime film, good guy film, and
Hmm.
it's the ultimate
And
twist at every turn.
espionage.
Yeah, dude. What a mind-bogglingly good movie, and also one that's I think, and I think that that's what I really like about these stories that we were
Hmm.
able to write, and the stories that Veritas writes in general, is I think a lot of stuff. I mean, we know from Matt Damon talking about that
Hmm.
movie he did with Ben Affleck that Netflix was like, yeah, you have to say the point of the movie every like 10 minutes or so because
Yes.
people are on their phones. Um, they did not do that at all in Charade.
Hmm.
In Charade, you just hit over the head with a new joke every line, and you're trying to keep up, and the plot doesn't make it easy to follow
Hmm.
because they trusted their audience to be able to follow something like that. And I think that that's something that we're trying to bring back of like, and this isn't just, I'm not saying this so that I'd be like, oh, if you find a plot hole, you actually just weren't smart enough to figure out the secret plot. Like, that's not at all what I'm saying. But I think that that's kind of the cool thing about these stories is we trust our audience to understand charade, like if they
Hmm.
watch it, they would get it. Um, and that's kind of the baseline of all Veritas stuff, I think, is like these stories aren't gonna dumb stuff down so that you can be on your phone and read the book at the same time.
Hmm.
But I know charade, and you and I talked about that before, but give me some takes on that. What do you think of that movie?
I think every writer should watch Charade because it is a perfect example of how to do every like plot beat is in
Yeah,
Charade. The
yeah.
the reversal, the reveal, like it has so many.
Like 12 times.
Yes. And it's a perfect example of how you don't even need to have high stakes. You just need to have new information.
Right,
Because
right.
every time she hears something new, it recontextualizes her and the
Yeah.
audience to what's going on. It is a brilliant masterpiece that I, for whatever reason, thought that Alfred Hitchcock directed when I was younger, only
It
to
does seem
discover
like
it
it would be
wasn't.
a Hitchcock. Yeah.
But, well, and Cary Grant. The other
Yeah.
thing is this. I love Cary Grant. The HD that we have available today, Cary Grant looks so old compared to Audrey Hepburn. It's
Yeah.
almost creepy, but you're like, I believe this because it's Cary
Right.
Grant,
He is a charming
fully
character.
clothed, showering with soap. Like, what more does one
Yeah.
need?
Yeah, dude.
This is the man to which I aspire to be in hopefully like a decade and a half. Like, he just
Or 2 or 3 decades, if that
the
movie's to be
man,
believed.
the man, like just charisma rolls
Yeah,
off of him. And the
yeah,
dialogue is chef's kiss.
right.
To your point on humor, I think that that's the tough thing is like we were talking about Parker. Parker is Donald Westlake with like his humor dialed down to like two. But
Yeah,
Donald Westlake is one of the greatest crime fiction writers of all time. Most of his stuff is like laugh out loud funny
right,
the entire
right.
time. I had to I'm working on a short story for a project that the direction was we're giving you a lot of wiggle room on this,
Hmm.
but we're not writing a humor book. So please try to keep the humor down to a minimum. The problem
Interesting.
is I'm realizing that the more ephemeral like my subject is, the more I start leaning into Donald Westlake, where I'm like trying to crack jokes every
Yeah.
other, like, at least one per paragraph. I'm like, is this? I don't think of myself as a jokey person. And yet here I am trying to like imitate Donald Westlake for reasons
Yeah.
I do not understand.
Well, that's to to the point of charade being such a masterclass is that you have the dialogue, which is so well written, and you have the actual story, which is so well written. And individually, it would make a good movie with either one of those, but to have them
Hmm.
both together is when you get it great. Uh, I mean, Westlake wrote Dortmunder, right?
Yes.
Which is
He
hilarious,
he
so funny.
said that Dortmunder, he was writing a Parker novel, and then as Parker walked away, he said something, and Westlake stopped and went, "But Parker would never make that joke." And that's the
That's so
moment he's
funny.
like, "I'm going to create the Parker spoof."
I gotta write a whole series. Dude, one of my favorite Parker one, I can't remember what it's called, but Dortmunder or one of his buddies rolls up with a copy of the
Yes.
Parker novel and they try to kidnap the kid based off of it. And I was like, this is too, I was listening to the audio because this is too much. Because I actually listened and read Dortmunder before I ever read Parker. And so I was like, now hold on a minute. This can't be really happening right now. There's no way that this can be a spoof of his most popular series character. That's incredible. But yeah, that's super funny about you should what you should do with that short story is you should have several drafts of it, and one should be the humor draft, and the one should be like knocked out all the jokes so you can submit it since they don't want it to be a humor book. Because I would love to read the one where a joke is cracked every few minutes. That
There's the
sounds great.
Westlake edition.
Yeah, dude. You should just start your own Dortmunder series right now off of that one.
Genuinely considered. Like, I don't know. I debate. So we talked about this at one point. If I hadn't used Jack Devlin for the Midas game, I was
Uh-huh.
debating entering him in men's adventure fiction May because I think that
Interesting.
characters, that's a great
Yeah.
field to like play with different characters in.
Yeah.
And Jack is one that I've had in the back burner of my mind for so long. He might end up, if I write more crime fiction, I'd love to continue to write more crime oriented
Yeah.
con game stories
Yeah, that's
with
exciting.
him as my Dortmunder slash Parker.
Yeah, dude. I mean, the con man stories, I think we talked about it in passing once or twice before, are some of my favorite things of all time. Like we talked about Better Call Saul,
Hmm.
fantastic.
Oh,
The
brilliant.
Sting is also so good. Um, the another one that's kind of like a sleeper crime con thing going on is the Rockford Files.
Hmm.
Um, which I think James Garner's character, it's just Jimmy Rockford. It's so tough.
Hmm.
Tom Selleck and Thomas Magnum, and then James Garner and Jim Rockford. It's always so tricky to remember which one is the right name.
So,
Which,
according to Tom Selleck wrote a book with a co-author, like a memoir, the other
yeah, dude,
year.
I've read it on
So
your
good.
recommendation. It is so good.
But he said that like that was that producer's like main goal was he always tried to make sure that he was big on make the actor and the character have the same first name. Like was part of
Which
his like mandates for
that was
shows.
part of the reason that I named Nate Colt because I played him in film before I ever wrote them. So I'm sure now, like looking like people who don't know the backlog of those characters read it and like, oh, this guy just thinks he's Nate Colt. It's like, well, no, I was honoring the legacy of Jim Rockford and Thomas Magnum. Like I thought that that was super cool. Because that was my first thought is it's like when you have something like that, and both of those shows are fantastic
Hmm.
because of that, I think, because they basically wrote those characters to be played by those guys.
Hmm.
Like they were like, these guys are really fantastic, capable leading men who maybe haven't had the opportunity to make their break. I know that Magnum
Hmm.
was really Tom Selleck's big break. Um, so I think that there's something special about that. And that was kind of when you're dealing with a bunch of your friends who are playing the roles, you're not going to be like, yeah, I wrote this super complex character, try it. And they're like, can only say lines as themselves. So you always just got to write the character as the person you're giving it to. So like my brother's character's name is Eli Harris and his name's Elijah Hummel. Like I wasn't gonna be like, hey, try to be some other random guy, so it's super nice to have that because then as you see with those shows, those guys just became those characters and
Hmm.
both of them I think have 7, 8 seasons, something like that.
Hmm.
And at that point they're an old friend. But I believe Jim Rockford was went to prison for being a con man. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
interesting having that
Mm-hmm.
as the base for him being a private investigator because
Mm-hmm.
similar, which was I was super excited um, finishing the Shel Scott book that I finished yesterday because the end of that book or the book all kind of works around a con game that's being played and Shel's following the con man and at the end he kind of has to reverse it himself. And I was like, man, this is perfect. I'm inundated with the con, dude. I love it. And that's kind of what happens in the Rockford Files. Jim Jim has a good friend named Angel who's just not a good
Mm-hmm.
friend at all. He's the worst guy in the series, bar none. He always gets them into the worst situations. And inevitably, what happens is not every episode, but every time Angel's involved, they have to pull off a con to con the bad guys. And it's so I think that just having that kind of seeped into my youth. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's some of my favorite things that I've ever filmed or written for Nate Colt involve some element of the con. Like the latest two episodes of the web series are
Mm-hmm.
essentially a con game, and it's just like, man, there's nothing like. I think it's why I like the Mission Impossible movies so much
Mm-hmm.
too.
They're
Even
heists.
yeah, dude, they're heists and they're also perfectly executed cons where you think like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, the heist has been stopped, and then next thing you know, that was the
No
plan the
way.
whole time. Like you're planning on them thinking that they got you. It's so sick. I love it. Even like a small example is when in the beginning of the last one, Final Reckoning, he gets
Mm-hmm.
captured and he's in the tuxedo and he's chained to the chair, and they're like, "Tell us where everything is." And he's like, "No," and he breaks the poison pill in his mouth and he's foaming at the mouth, and they untie him and he wakes up and it was all a con. And it's like, dude, that's so sick. I love that. And he beats everybody up, and I was like, man, this is this is what I like to see. So yeah, um, uh, all this to say, the con is just fantastic.
Have you ever watched Maverick?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Like I mean the show, not the movie.
Yeah,
Okay, just
I
making
watched
sure.
both.
The I think that that's one of the cool things about watching um that show is because it really does lead into then watching the Rockford Files
Rockford Files.
because
Yeah,
he
dude.
carries a similar vibe there where in for those who don't know, Maverick is a TV show. James Garner plays a traveling gambler in the Old
So
West.
good.
And some of my favorite episodes are actual con games that
Yeah,
they just
dude.
roll out every now and again. And I'm like, literally, I open my book of the con and I'm like, yeah, they are following the Pearl scheme here,
That's
or
awesome.
they're doing the payoff. Like they are
Yeah,
running an actual con by the book, and
that's
it's
so
so
cool.
immensely entertaining. Highly recommend
It's
if people
also
haven't.
also so cool that you have the Book of the Con, dude. That's fantastic. But yeah, dude, you would know it would be a fantastic episode when part of the con involved bringing both of the Maverick brothers in
Hmm.
to pull it off, and then you'd be so hyped. You'd be like, oh, this is what TV was made for. This is so
Bart and Brett.
fantastic. Yes, dude. And then eventually Roger Moore came on as their cousin,
Yes,
dude. So it's like, man, you just
Bo.
have incredible work.
There have
Um,
been
yeah,
moments that I didn't ask when I interviewed Bo Lamore, but there was part of me I was like, "Are you named after Roger Moore's character?"
that's so funny. What's super funny is there's a our next door neighbors kids, they have like, I don't know, a younger boy, probably like 10, 12, and he always has his friends over. And I remember the one day I got home from work and they're out there like blasting each other with Nerf guns. And so I was like, all right, we're taking them down. So I went and
Time
I
to show
grabbed
these punks what
I
life
went
is
and grabbed
like.
my 3-year-old daughter and like six Nerf guns and just came out charging, blasting them. And we had a great time. And Luell was whipping around, grabbing Nerf bullets for me and bringing them over to me. And the one kid grabbed a hockey stick and just charged after me. I was like, well, what the a hockey stick? What are you doing? But all of that to say, that kid's name is Bo. And I was like, man, is this just out of the blue or is he actually related to like the same way as he named after There's no way he's named after Bo Lamore, Like there just couldn't be any possible way. But it is so interesting because it's a great name. Um,
Hmm.
my one friend actually has said that he wants to name his next dog Beauregard and call him
Hmm.
Bo for short. So Who
I
knows?
like names like that. I think that it just makes life a little interesting. But to that point, I think that you are clearly raising your daughter to be a men's adventure fiction heroine, is what I'm hearing here.
Yeah. Well, I talk about this a lot with my wife. Um, I don't ever want her, and this isn't to say I think women can do whatever they please. I don't care. It's a free country, like they can go be interested in classically masculine things, but it's very important to me that she never feels like she has to be,
Hmm.
because I don't want her to feel like she gets to 14, 15, and she's like, man, dad only likes me when I do guy stuff. Like I want her to be fully able to embrace all the feminine, like classically feminine things that she wants to, because I don't want her to feel like have a weird identity crisis. Like my dad wouldn't love me if I was a girl. It's like, well, you are a girl and I do love you. Like stop, like calm down. But to that point, there are a bunch of things that she's done that have, I mean, I think it just shows that anyone who's interested in becoming a parent or on the like have become parents recently, you get a little worried that like, oh, what if they don't like the things that I like? And it's
Hmm.
the answer is if you love your kid and you love things, they're gonna love the things you love. And to that point, I have this like plastic training knife that's spray painted and is used as a prop. And Luelle just latched onto that and she was running around with it. And the one day she was like, we're about to go to bed. And she's like, hold on, you hide and try and get me and I'll stab you. I was like, all right, let's give it a try. And so she like tucks it into her PJs and pulls her shirt over it. And she's like, all right, go. And I jump out from behind the couch and she like quick draws and starts stabbing me. I was like, is this the best moment of my life? If I like reached the peak of parenthood? I've raised a small assassin, dude. This is amazing. So yeah, she's definitely becoming an adventure fiction heroine. Hopefully I mean, she seems to like it. So if she likes it, that's a path, an avenue for her.
It's important to give kids life skills that they can carry with
Yeah,
them throughout life.
exactly, dude.
Nathaniel, this has been a lot of fun. Where can people go to learn more about you, your work, and give them the pitch on international enforcement?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Piedmonticus. It's just Piedmont, which is the term for a hill, I think, something like that. And then ICUS. Terrence will link it below so you don't have to remember all that. I'm slightly active on YouTube. I've been uploading all of my short films that we did last year,
Hmm.
slowly but surely. And then other than that, you can buy the Nate Colt series on Amazon. That's my flagship series, my favorite character that I write. For sure, there's a lot of humor. There's also a lot of elements of crime. But at its heart, it's high adventure, which is super exciting. This is a little bit of a sidebar. I am
Ooh,
submitting a Nate Colt story to the Adventure Writers competition with Clive Cussler.
congratulations.
Thanks, dude. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I have no expectations other than getting I one time I had a chance to try out for a professional ultimate frisbee team. It was open tryouts and you had to pay $65. And I kept thinking, well, I can be told I'm not good enough for free. So that's my same. I'm gonna pay, I think it's a $75 submission fee, and they'll probably be like, yeah, not enough. But that's okay. You gotta learn. Gotta temper your pride. Easy, humbling thing coming up for me. So that's perfect. But I'm really excited about that one. I think it perfectly encapsulates the way that I want stories to be told for Nate Colt. It has some treasure
Hmm.
hunting aspects, it has some crime aspects, it has some espionage aspects. So I'm super excited for that. You can expect that to release early to mid 2027. There's
Hmm.
some things I got to build out first, but yeah, it's probably the best thing I've ever written. And then um, other than that, like Terrence said, we talked about in the beginning, Dress Like an Adventurer goes live every Saturday, and there's some cool stuff coming up. So check that out on Instagram. But the pitch for international enforcement, uh, man, I've been thinking about how to do this because I don't want to give too much information away, and I don't know how to say it perfectly concise. So this is the first time I've ever had to do it. So we'll give it a shot. Salvatore Cotolino finds himself at a big kind of mafia family meetup with a main mafia member there. Um, and he's there because a hit was put out on him. And when he escaped that hit, he realized it was two mafia hitmen. And that's a big deal because the family can't put hits out on the family. So he tracks it back to the guy who those guys worked for. And when he confronts him, things go sideways, and the the big mafia guy who's there is killed. And it looks like because Sal has to kill everybody else who are all mafia guys who had kind of been turned or were working on shady dealings. So now it looks like Sal is responsible for this big family's death. And he is not a member of that family. He's affiliated with the mafia boss, but he's part of a second family. So now war between the families is gonna happen. But the boss, before he dies, scrawls out some stuff on a paper and tells Sal to get to the bottom of it. And that leads on an odyssey of fire. A quick pitch for Luke's book, which
How
honestly,
many
kudos to that
different
guy.
Veritas titles can you work into a single
A pitch.
pitch? We can do like the what Charles R. Dye did for
Yeah,
52, where every one.
is a
No,
new
it's 50
chapter.
to 1. 50 to
Yeah,
1,
yeah,
where
exactly.
every book title is a chapter title.
It's gonna be perfect, dude. We'll make that happen one day. Which to kudos to Luke for writing an incredible traveling across the United States book. I remember when I started international enforcement, I was like, oh yeah, this is super straightforward. Next thing you know, it's taking me probably 2 or 3 weeks longer because you can't fly anywhere because it's 1919 and flight was really not that big of a thing back then. So now I'm backfilling history and making things up to be like, oh, this is how it would be possible to fly across Europe. You got to trust me on this one. So he ends up going on a boat, going on a train, going on a plane. Um, with the taxi cab driver who is a pretty cool character that I want to bring back. And he ends up having to find his way. The goal is to get to a fortress in the Austrian Alps, I believe it is. So
Mhm.
I I say I believe because I've been thinking a lot about the different Alps because of my trip coming up. So I might have said the wrong Alps, but yeah, he ends up in the Alps. There's some stuff I wrote there. I don't think this is the greatest thing I've ever written. I think it's really, really good. It's not my favorite, but I think there is one sequence in there that's the best thing I've ever written, bar none. It was, I mean, you mentioned it in
Mhm.
the text. It's just it was really fun to write. It was one of those things where as you're writing it, you like fingers can't go fast enough, and you're actually like breathing a little heavy because it's so intense. You're like, man, what's gonna happen? I gotta figure this out. And so it was really cool. I think people are gonna like it. So
I think people will check out International Enforcement. It is a part of the Veritas Crime Duel, which also has my
yeah.
story, The Midas Game. It
Which
is.
you gotta give a pitch for. We
Thank
gotta
you.
hear
The Midas Game is Jack Devlin is a down on his luck con man who needs to make this con work. Tony Skurlock is a bounce house king of the North Shore, and he has come across an amazing deal where using artificial intelligence, he can get a return of over 650%. Which
Man.
the question is that too good to be true? Will Jack Devlin have the golden touch? Read the Midas game to find out.
Dude, it's perfect. Way more concise. Well done. Very articulate.
I, I have to give credit to Faith wrote my like description thing, and also
Yeah.
just shout out she did an amazing job on the cover. We
I
also
know.
worked with Typhoon Tales to like
Yes, dude.
create these
Fantastic.
great little sketches of our characters to go on it. It just
No, it's
oh
so good.
just looks so cool. It just pops.
Those look so good. Yeah, the you guys, she did a fantastic job with the cover design, and we did the split screen. Jeff and Luke did the
The
flip flop
alt flip
reverse. Yeah,
flops.
yeah, exactly. I don't know which style I like more, but I do know for sure that Faith knocked it out of the park. It's one of the best
Thank you.
looking covers out there.
We can be biased for our cover. It's
Yeah, dude.
okay. I'm excited. People can check that out today. I'm going to link it in the show notes. Check out International Enforcement and the Midas game. If you like the book, let us know so we know to
Yeah,
have
for
more
sure.
Sal stories and more Jack Devlin stories.
For sure. Yeah, and this is a great deal, if nothing else. You're getting two books for the price of one. So for sure, and it's it's by the author of um, Unwanted Passenger and the Nate
Hmm.
Colt series, dude. You're in for a treat. You gotta check it out. I'm excited to hear what people think, and I think you'll also be able to see Terrence and Jeff tomorrow on the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast, where we'll be talking even more
Hmm.
about this. So I'm looking forward to that too, my friend.
I'm excited. Nathaniel, thank you for joining us on the show today. We'll link everything in the show notes. Thanks for coming on the show.
Of course. Dude, thanks for having me. What a blast.
Hold on.